call this meeting of the Shorewood Village Board to order at 7:37. All trustees are present. Trustee McKay, who's excused. Is this meeting been properly noticed?
Yes.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of approving this consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Takes us to item 6. Is there a motion to approve the village board minutes of October 18th?
I move approval of the October 18th, 2016 board minutes.
Second.
Any discussion?
I have some requests on page 2 under capital projects, master plan review. I'm unclear if the first motion was withdrawn. So the first paragraph, and then you'll see in the third paragraph, there's another motion. I don't know if we amended, if I amended my first one, or if it was withdrawn and I restated something.
I did go and watch that. There was a withdrawal from that, and then a new one was made.
So should we say that?
The motion was withdrawn. I mean,
What item are we talking about on here?
Capital projects, fund master plan review.
Page 2. Okay, I got it.
So were both the amendment and the motion itself withdrawn then? It says there was a motion and then there was a motion to amend the motion. So they would both have to have been withdrawn.
it was very complicated when I watched tape, so I did the best I could. So I think I got that right, but it could be more specific if that's what the question is.
As long as we're there, we can spell my name right too.
Yeah.
That's the next one, yes.
Wait a minute, okay. I know, and then,
It looks like both motions were withdrawn, I would think, because then there was another motion made.
It was
oh,
very,
it says the motion was withdrawn. Okay.
But the first one could have been, you just say the motion was withdrawn at the end of the first paragraph, or both motions were withdrawn, and a whole motion made.
and that's what happened.
Yeah.
So what would be the proper wording then?
The second paragraph that said both motions were withdrawn, rather than the motion was withdrawn.
The second paragraph? We don't have paragraph.
Page 2 under capital projects.
Withdrawn.
Oh, I'm up. That was a capital project.
And then under marketing and communications fund,
Wait, now do you have? Let's make
It
sure.
was the second paragraph should be changed to both motions.
That's it. Okay. You're okay. I'm gonna make sure she's okay.
So under marketing and communications fund, I would like to clarify after the 12,000, so it says fund tax levy contribution by 12,000, can you just say the amount budgeted for coordination duties of the consultants? Give the rationale of the 12,000.
I listened to the tape, the motion was to reduce the 12,000, and it would have come out of the corresponding general professional fees expense line. I didn't balance the entry. The motion was to distribute 12,000.
But where we got the 12,000, I know there was discussion about 12,000, the amount, why we picked 12,000. I mean, it wasn't just picked out of the air, it was the amount that was budgeted for coordination services. Do you remember that, Chris?
All I remember is you are correct that that was the amount for the administration services. But that wasn't part of the motion, but that you are correct.
I mean, just the
The
discussion.
numbers do equal.
Right, I mean, I could go back and look at the tape, but there was discussion about why 12,000.
Maybe it wasn't part of the motion. Just
I think you're going to the intention.
the intention.
The intention behind the amount.
Because we had a discussion of staff told us the coordination duties were no longer needed, and therefore we asked Mark to identify the number, and he said 12.
You could just add a parenthetical,
Yeah.
putting that the 12,000 represents the amount that was budgeted for X.
That's one time. Thank you.
How's that gonna read then?
In parentheses, the $12,000 represents the amount budgeted for coordination services.
I had an amendment too on page 3.
Are you done?
Was that good?
I have one more, but she can go ahead.
Okay.
On page 3 under, well, like the third paragraph that says the amount for other capital projects that were removed prior to board consideration were discussed. I just wanted to add under discussion focused on the 2017 alley program, the draft budget, 2017 draft budget document was not updated to reflect funding amount of $250,000. Which is the cause of the confusion about, and I did watch the tape also, and that was what staff said about that particular part of the draft budget. Because you'll remember that page that had $250,000 and identified 3 alley segments.
Right.
And Mark said, when the budget was done, we changed the dollar amount, but we didn't update those alley segments. And that wasn't, I just want that in the minutes because there was discussion at various points in the budget process and confusion about why Trustee Rosick and I were bringing up issues about alley funding, and I just want there to be in the record that that part of the draft budget had not been updated.
So what would be the exact wording?
The exact wording would be,
And where would it go?
I would take out discussion, okay, keep that sentence in, discussion focused on the 2017 alley program, and I would want to add the 2017 draft budget document.
Wait a minute, now that sentence goes on from there
So
too.
you want a new sentence or you want it squeezed in?
The sentence
Yeah,
doesn't end
period.
at the
Oh,
word program.
I'm sorry, you're correct, period. Okay,
Period after alley program.
yes, and the 2017 draft budget document was not updated to reflect the funding amount of $250,000.
And then what are we gonna say about the IT vulnerability
That can
study?
stay in, I have no issue with that.
Further discussion focused on.
Then that's not a sentence anymore.
We did further discussion that focused on.
IT vulnerability study and agenda management software were also discussed.
Just from a, maybe parenthetical, is how you use it. We also had long discussion on the vulnerability study and the agenda management software. So, I mean, I just don't, I think adding the parentheses is maybe the better way, because I,
Where would the parentheses, what are you recommending?
well, whatever our trustee is saying, just discussion focused on the 17 alley program.
And then parentheses right after that?
Yeah, and then you can start a new sentence.
Well, you don't even have to start a new
I
sentence
suppose,
after
yeah.
that. You can
Yeah.
just go on
I suppose.
the comma.
I don't care the punctuation, just as long as there's a mention in it, because to me, it was the cause of some confusion about the whole alley discussion.
Under Shorewood today, it says with trustee Buckhorst, McKay, Maher, Zovic, and President Johnson, you might want to add the words voting no. It doesn't state how they voted. That's all I have for those.
You got that? Any other comments on the October 18th? Seeing none,
So what, on that last one, the budget document was not updated. The budget.
Are you talking about the alley?
Yeah, I mean, the budget
Here's
was
the map.
up, the map was not updated.
In the budget
The
document.
budget document also identifies 3 alley segments at $250,000. Not the current budget that's posted online, but the budget on the binders that we were working from throughout the budget process.
The map in the budget document.
But the
Map
three
in the
alleys were also
document was
identified.
not updated,
The
not
map-
the budget. The budget had been
No, the
updated.
3 alley segments are identified on that
Right.
page.
But
So it's not just the map, it's the text. It identifies the Larkin
Okay.
Newhall.
So the capital request supporting documents, that's the title of the,
Yeah,
so the budgeted fund had been updated. It's the capital request supporting documents had not been updated.
well, the document had not been updated. I mean, the capital, the supporting documents are part of the budget, are they not?
Yeah, but the front of the budget, yeah, it's not the whole budget, it's not the total. It was the attached, so capital request supporting document.
What's the name of the document that you're
Yeah.
saying? As in the budget. So if you're right, saying budget documents, you're titling what
What
document?
specific document, not a document.
Okay. We have a motion? Mike? Van's not clear yet.
So am I adding what you said in front of what David said?
Where it was saying, I don't know, the 2017 budget capital request supporting documentation had not been updated in the budget document.
So when you're saying budget, you're talking strictly the financial schedules at the front
Right,
of the
it's not
document.
the whole.
I mean, when I say budget, I think of the whole document as one thing, but
But
whatever.
different parts have been updated.
Okay. We have a motion, we have a second. We have amendments. All in favor of approving the minutes of October 18th with the amendments that have been discussed, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Takes us to the next item. Is there a motion to approve the November 7th village board minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Discussion?
I have some suggested changes. Under item number 5, halfway down, it says bid director Jim Plaisted provided some background to the transfer and the specific facade grant submissions. I'm not sure what that refers to, but after that sentence, I'd like to add, trustee Rozak questioned the necessity of transferring the $50,000 to the bid since it was not needed.
Okay.
And funding would transfer to the CDA by the end of the year.
So in the last ones, everything that we discussed, I thought pretty much were items that referred to what was done, not what was said. And I just want to make sure that we're following Robert's rules properly here, that, minutes should include what is done and not what is said.
Is that what,
Yeah. 11th edition, 468, lines 16 through 18.
So you, to read that over, could we get a briefing on that?
But right now, no.
No,
Yeah, I was gonna- I was gonna- I was gonna make a
Well,
comment,
yeah.
I was gonna make a comment to the same extent.
Yeah, I mean, we have to watch out what we're doing. We can't have transcripts here.
Exactly,
These minutes are not transcripts.
exactly. Thank you.
They're record what was done.
Okay. After the words CDA member Pete Petrie and Finance Director Mark Anderson, the potential options relating to the village bid and TIF. I think my minutes, my requests were included in the packet, is that correct? You want me to read it? It would be the trustee Rozak requested that the
Well,
MOU.
you're requesting it right now, right? We're basing, not from your memo as much as we're discussing each line item right now.
Yes.
Okay, so what are you requesting?
That the language be added to say trustee Rozak requested the village manager and attorney to add a clause to the MOU that specifies the following. And I can read it. It says the village board retains the right to abolish the facade program at a future date if the public and elected officials determine by a majority vote that the program is no longer needed or desired.
Where are you in the minutes?
Hang on a second. Where are we? We're.
Item 5, I assume.
On the consent agenda.
No, we're not on, that's something else.
On item 5, the consent agenda from November 7th.
Right.
Mhm. That
Correct.
was the $50,000
Okay, got it.
transfer to the
Yep,
bid.
yep, yep.
What was it? So which paragraph were you? MOU?
It's supposed to be in the MOU.
I don't know, you're in a different, yeah, you're in a whole different
Okay.
free, or somewhere else. You're in facade program on page 2.
I'd like to, on that, item 5, where we discussed what bid director Jim Plaisted provided some background to the transfer. I mean, he specifically noted that the deficit of current amounts owed was $27. So rather, I would like to reference specifically what he said rather than say he provided some background. So I would change that sentence to bid director Jim Plaisted noted that the current and projected deficit for facade improvement grants is $27.
Can I do my next one?
Yeah, I'll take care of one.
Sure.
Because that was a half-hour discussion, and there was quite a bit of exchange, and there was questions of Mr. Plaisted, and a lot of, I mean, he provided background, and then there was a question, he provided an analysis of what the outstanding balance might be depending on how the, correct. And then we took the action. I mean, the thing is reporting the action we took in the reports.
That's right, that's what was done.
And we approved it 7-0, so.
Well, he did say that was the deficit. I mean, that is what he said.
There were probably lots of things said during that long discussion, too.
You know, okay.
I mean, it goes back to the Roberts rules, you know, it should record what was done and not what is said.
Well, then we take out all of the discussion.
You know, there's a lot
Oh,
of
yeah.
discussion.
Right?
Probably not right. Probably if, to, you know, use a little discretion on that, you know, the items that are, I don't know if that material, you probably feel it does. I don't know if other people feel that that's a material item or not.
Well, it doesn't, I mean,
Certainly
doesn't,
the most material thing is the vote.
and that data is in the report itself.
No, I don't know, it isn't.
What's on the video, if you want to watch it, I sat there and watched 2 hours of video, and there was a lot of discussion. Pete Peters did an extensive, I mean, there was a lot of back and forth. It's picking one piece out of a half-hour discussion, one fact, when you should, if you're going to that level, you should listen to the whole thing, because there's a lot of discussion and how the people were talking.
Do you want me to do
Yeah, let's, I don't think we're getting a consensus to include that one. Why don't you go on?
Okay. I didn't know if we wanted to note the 2 most important things under new business CDA for 1 and 2.
What item are we?
new business, number 8, CDA,
All right.
number 1.
Mhm.
Do we want to add the words, Peter Hammond presented to the village board some of the major revisions made to the business loan program, including lowering the maximum loan amount to $45,000? I mean, that was,
Yeah, that's
It's fine.
and then number 2, same thing for the facade program, you might want to say, once again, the CDA blah, blah, blah recommended the revised versions of the facade program to the village board. Mr. Hammond presented to the board some of the, and instead of saying limitations and maximum grants, which I don't know what that means, I think he told us about the new, he went through the new requirements step by step, so you could say new requirements for the facade program, including lowering the maximum amount to 10,000. That was probably the most significant.
I'm fine with that one. Okay. I want to make sure Diane's fine with that.
I'm hoping that Allison will provide
Well, it's,
Why don't you
See
say what you
Okay,
pick
this
up
is what I-
now? It's good.
Mr.
number
Hammond
1A,
presented.
so after revisions made to the business loan program, including lowering the maximum grant amount to $10,000. Or facade.
The loan one, if you're under 1,
Mhm.
I would say lowering the maximum loan amount
Loan amount.
to 45,000.
And then the other one is, Mr. Hammond presented to the board new requirements for the facade program, including lowering the amount to $10,000.
Lowering the maximum amount.
Maximum.
Yeah, maximum grant amount. Just like this. And then where it says there was additional discussion about exclusions to the guidelines, I think that discussion was about the new program requirement that was added so that the village would follow the new facade application agreement for larger facade grants made outside of the CDA program. I think that's what we discussed. That would,
Now it says, which Mr. Hammond mentioned is clarified in the revised facade program. Doesn't that kind of answer that one, or?
so the sentence, there was additional discussion about exclusions to the guidelines. I don't remember that. I believe that discussion was about the new requirement the village would follow the same program guidelines for larger facade grant requests made outside of the CDA program. Because we included that language in the actual document.
Okay, got to get the wording down here,
Okay.
otherwise we can't approve it.
Okay, so it just says there was additional discussion about, and then you cross out exclusions to the guidelines. I would just say there was additional discussion about the new program requirement that the village follow the facade application and agreement procedures for larger facade grant requests made directly to the village outside of the CDA program.
What about which Mr. Hammond mentioned is clarified in the revised facade program? We don't want to lose that, I don't think, do we? Or am I?
I don't think we need it anymore.
Yes,
So,
I think.
You just keep it, put an add on to it.
You could just say Mr. Hammond mentioned this requirement is clarified in the revised facade program.
Okay,
Okay.
sure.
why did you get stuck?
I'm not very sure.
Bad night for you.
There was additional discussion about new requirements for the facade. No, wrong place. Yeah.
Yep.
For the facade program, including lowering the amount to the maximum grant amount to $10,000. There was additional discussion about the new program requirements that the village follow the facade application agreement procedure for larger facade grant requests made directly to the village outside of the facade,
The CDA's facade.
the CA.
And Mr. Hammond mentioned this is clarified in the revised facade program.
This request is clarified.
Anything else?
Yes, under public safety. It says, there was discussion, oh, I'm sorry.
Where are you? One or two?
I am on number page,
Public safety and then
Public
two
safety.
items under it.
yep, number 1.
And there's 2 paragraphs.
Yes, so the first paragraph.
Okay.
Trustee Rozak summarized this item, defining parking permit districts and residential congested commuter areas. It was conveyed that the Public Safety Committee was recommending, and I have this written out, Diane, if you need it, if it's agreeable, was recommending that a residential parking permit area be designated for Prospect and Downer as opposed to the designation of a residential congested commuter area to ensure that the test for congestion as outlined in the current ordinance would be applied when resident requests designations of residential streets outside the university-related boundary. So that was the reason why we were suggesting.
Can you
Let me read it again.
go back, just like the last sentence, I was with to tell us the future, I'm trying to,
Okay.
you know,
So it would say, Trustee Rozak summarized this item defining parking permit districts and residential congested commuter areas. Trustee Rozak conveyed that the Public Safety Committee was recommending a residential parking permit area be designated for Prospect and Downer, in parentheses, as opposed to the designation as a residential congested commuter area, to ensure that the test for congestion as outlined in the current ordinance would be applied when residents request designations of residential streets outside of the university-related congested area boundary.
I was with you that we were recommending that those streets be designated residential congested commuter area versus what we were thinking about. And then we were going to create an ordinance for the next village board meeting on November 21st. The whole future, locking in the future, I'm not sure I remember that discussion.
Oh, okay, then can we reword it? I mean, it was the test for congestion, that's why we.
For that, right, for that parking area, that's how the test, we decided to use that test for those streets.
Oh, and
Apply that permit to that area, that was our decision, not the extended congested commuter area north.
okay, so can we just say to ensure that the test for congestion would apply? Period?
To that area,
Yeah.
to those streets,
Yeah.
yes.
Said would apply, period.
yes.
Okay. All right.
Any other comments on this one?
For this.
For November 7th?
Oh. Maybe I'm just finding it.
Can I ask a clarification? I mean, I was going to suggest a sentence when a trustee votes, when we have a split vote, and
Where were you going to do this? I'm sorry.
this is item 3, the MOU, consideration MOU
Wait.
Item 3,
Okay, got it.
consideration
Oh, wait,
of MOU between the village and the
Wait,
city.
now I got item 3, consideration of valley reconstruction.
Go back.
Prior page.
Eight,
New business.
Okay, I got it.
I mean, where I voted no, I would like to put something in explaining why I voted no, but if that's inappropriate to have an explanation.
Meaning you said it during the meeting and you want it
Well,
reflected?
yeah, I said it, someone can go back and watch the tape, just looking at the minutes and see that a trustee myself or someone else voted no on something, but I'm curious.
I can see doing it. I'm just afraid that, when we get too detailed, and we have to be careful. Number one, we can't be spending this much time on minutes. It's a practical problem. And we don't want to be personalizing, getting too detailed starts to personalize and even politicize discussions and moving away from what the board did to who said what, because that can really have kind of a chilling effect on what we're trying to do. So just with those little comments in mind, I don't think what you're talking about falls into that category right now, but I just want to be cautious on what we're doing here.
Okay.
Okay, so now tell us what you're recommending.
So, I would just say, I guess above the paragraph starting trustee Mott removed, I would say trustee Dementa, it is questioned whether the CDA has demonstrated the responsibility to manage a program of this magnitude.
Mr. President, I don't want to object to that.
I don't care for that.
Those are the kind of comments that, that is in fact what took place in what you said, but unless we're going to record all of everyone's statements, I don't wish that to represent, but that was the only question that was made.
Right.
You're explaining why you voted no. I didn't explain why I voted yes, nor do the minutes reflect questions that I asked of staff, of other presenters, and I think we're going beyond what we need to and ought to record here in this minutes with that additional commentary.
I agree. Okay, any other comments on this? When I say on this, I mean on November 7th minutes. Okay, we have a motion, we have a second, we've got some amendment that's recorded. All in favor of the motion as stated with the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Yeah.
Record that as a 4-2.
Would you guys like it on the record to say what you
Pardon?
won't get recorded in the minutes?
Record who has the names. What are we doing on that now? Pardon? Do we need to record the names? Who said the names?
Yes, yes.
So that would be trustee Rozak and trustee Mata. So that passes. Next item, item 8, the November 14th special village board minutes. Is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve the November 14, 2016 minutes.
Second.
Discussion?
Under number 4A, Jim Gay said, blah, 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 we're present to provide information and answer questions. I would like a sentence added that the question that I posed, I'll just summarize it and then I can give you exact language, but was, I wanted to know, by adopting the bid's operating plan, will we be forfeiting our right to vote on the administration of the event? And staff confirmed the board would have a future vote on that.
So what would be the wording?
it would say trustee Rozak requested that the
Just
village.
go right after the word questions, period.
Here.
Okay.
Trustee Rozak requested the village remain the administrator for the bike races and asked if by adopting the bid operating plan, the board was forfeiting their right to vote on the administration of this event. And,
Was that answered?
yeah, staff confirmed that the board would have a future vote on that.
I guess what I would ask, if we're going to be going back into minutes and inserting our own narratives, that we are all given the same opportunity to do this before we vote on this, because I'm sure we all have had valuable questions at different points that are not recorded in these minutes, and I'm not going to feel comfortable voting for amended minutes based on one or two trustees' input, but as far as their own personal statements.
It does start to get towards the personalization, even politicization.
If it were to say a question were asked of bid administrators?
Or that the bid administrator clarified that.
Right, but once we
No, it
start
wasn't him,
giving,
It was, I understand what you're saying. I asked a question, I think, to the attorney, to Nathan, was it to Jim? Was.
right, but is the question important or who asked the question? I mean, if
You don't
it's
have
the
to say
question, then
me.
we don't say trustee Rosa.
Okay, we can take out trustee Rozak, I'm fine with that. A question was asked,
How about just give the answer?
The bid,
It was-
the board will have the ability to vote on future, or whatever the
It was
result
agreed
is.
that the board would have,
It was discussed and said that the marketing and the bid board will decide how they want to divvy up the events, and that if there's any budget amendment needed, they come back for that. That's what, listen to.
I think trustee McCabe had said, my point was, we had 3 events.
Right.
And I didn't want to just pass along one. And so the question then was to Nathan was, if we're voting on the bid operating plan, that identified, the one we had in front of us said they were the administrator of bike races.
Right.
Were we foregoing, I mean, was that then an approval of them
Forever, I think, moving forward. Whether they would you be able to change the, I think was the question whether you could change that.
Right. If we could, if we.
so could it say something like it was stated that what? Or it was
asked.
discussed and agreed.
Okay.
Clarified.
Yeah,
Okay,
clarified.
clarified, thank you.
Bid director clarified that.
That if the marketing and bid board decide to shift the responsibilities for an event, they would come back to the board.
The board would have-
Right, as needed, there's a change in the budget. Not, then not.
I'll watch the video. I'm pretty sure I have it right. Okay.
Any other discussion on
One
November
more.
14th?
Oh, there was a motion that was forgotten. So under 4C,
The resolution 2016-20?
yes, wait, let me see. It's the second page. After the trustee amendment moved for the 70,000 from the general fund reserve to capital projects, the next motion was trustee amendment moved, seconded by trustee Rozak, to transfer funding from Sheffield Road construction to alley reconstruction in the amount of 90,000+, whatever was identified in the budget. The motion failed, 5-2, with trustee Bachhorst, McKay, President Johnson, Zovic, and Maher voting no.
I listened to the video, I did at an hour and 15, I did a there was a discussion about, somebody said, what other ideas are you gonna put forth? And it was like, well, let's take reconstruction money, and we discussed it. I didn't see a motion in there at all. There was clearly at the end, guys said, okay, what are the edits? Or we went through it and it says, okay, well, this is it, and we voted on the 70,000. That was the only motion I saw there. There was a discussion of moving money, but I didn't see a motion. Maybe I missed it, maybe staff.
May I make a suggestion, because the clerk did go back and look, and she didn't find it either. So if we could go back, and I can have her try to document in that where she, I'll have her review those again when she can to see, because she didn't see that motion. The discussion was very clear that that discussion occurred, and that's what the discussion said, but she didn't see a motion. So
Okay.
just,
Then if there is no motion, can we add that we discussed, we proposed to do it, even though we didn't make a formal motion? If it wasn't a formal motion, I mean, there were two ways that we were proposing in Valley reconstruction money to be increased.
yeah, she said that the discussion occurred, but there's no motion. Exactly like your motion, there was no motion.
Okay. That would be
That's
fine.
what she said.
So what are we doing? Or what are you recommending?
That trustee.
Where does it go?
Underneath the trustee Amenta moved, seconded by trustee Rozak, to amend the motion to transfer 70 grand. So the next,
From, okay, all the way to the end of that sentence, that stays.
and then just say, in addition, they proposed
They,
transfer funding
Trustees
from
Amenta and Rozak proposed
Sheffield
to
to
transfer
Alley Construction.
$90,000 from road maintenance capital project to alley reconstruction capital project.
but that wasn't part of the motion then, though, right?
No, it was
So
just,
we-
it was just a proposal.
And you can't go right on and say with trustees, of course, with those voting nay, the motion
Right.
failed, because you're implying that that's in there, so it has to be.
I thought it was a I don't remember a specific 90. I heard there was, what about the idea of moving money? And then there was a discussion. I mean, how about just state that the board discussed what the option of possibly moving money from the
Sheffield.
road reconstruction to the ALA
Sheffield.
program.
And then along those same
It
lines,
wasn't
there was,
road construction,
It was
it's
Sheffield.
rehab.
Oh, it's rehab, maintenance, road maintenance.
Road maintenance.
but at the same time, we also, you would have to put in there that we also discussed the fact that there's a long-range plan for the road reconstruction and the alley program that 5 of the 7 of us were concerned that changing this line item on the budget and creating a new policy based on wanting to shift money didn't coincide necessarily with what the Department of Public Works has suggested and has planned for and budgeted for the long term. So I mean, I don't know how
And I
much
think that's why.
addition to the minutes we want to
That's why it
make.
got
We
voted
could
out.
say there was discussion about it, that's part of the discussion.
Or we could leave it as is.
Yeah.
Okay, but can you just have the clerk provide me with that section that you were talking about?
Sure.
They're gonna leave it out.
But what are we doing? I mean, we're trying to approve these minutes right now.
Leaving it out. That's what trustee Bachhorst wants to do.
Well, I'm only one.
Well, I believe we have to adopt by unanimous consent, so
Right.
if anybody disagrees, we don't make the change.
Yeah. You disagree?
So what would the change be?
There's no change, you just disagree.
What would the change have been if I would not have?
It would have said trustee Amenta and Rozak further discussed, or you could just say there was proposed transfer funding from Sheffield Road maintenance to alley reconstruction.
No.
There was a 50-minute discussion about the impact on it.
I know.
The whole plan.
It sounds politicizing to me.
I mean, unless you want to throw in that trustee Bachhorst then stated that this would be in direct conflict with the Department of Public Works, and then trustee Zovic concurred. I mean, again, I think this is politicization of the minutes, and I don't think it's appropriate.
I will have the clerk go back and make sure those are moved out. We'll have to come back.
But if we approve minutes, we can only change them by amendment in the future.
Right.
You can't change them. Once they're approved, they can't be
Well, can we
changed.
approve them with the exception of
No,
item?
no, no.
Oh, really?
I'm on.
Can we defer approving these?
We can defer approving, but I don't want to go through.
Oh,
this
geez,
again.
no.
Okay, I'm for leaving it the way it is.
Right.
As long as there wasn't a motion, right?
Yeah. Yeah, if we do find there's a motion, then we're gonna have to do an amendment. Okay? Any other discussion on November 14th? Okay, we've got, motion, then second. And we've got, some agreed upon amendments. All in favor of the motion as stated with the agreed upon amendments, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
4-2 with those in. And we're not done yet. November 21st, is there a motion to approve the November 21st village board minutes?
I move to approve the November 21st, 2016 board minutes.
Second.
Discussion?
On the second page, item 11A. The title should just be Planning Commission, take off Public Safety.
No.
The numbers go 11B, 11A, 11B, C.
Yeah, we got some,
We took that out. B1 is, we took out the order. And
But
we
then,
did
but
B2.
then what, oh,
B2,
okay.
and it started to.
So the second should just be made.
so public safety under
Oh.
B should be plan commission. Is that what you just said?
No, 11A, it says Planning Commission,
Oh, I
Public
see.
Safety, just
That
cross
should just be
Public
plan
Safety.
commission. Okay. You see that? Okay. Anything else? Anybody else have comments?
50-minute meeting, no?
What's that?
No, I was just commenting on this, it was a 50-minute meeting.
Wow.
Okay, no other comments? We have a motion, we have a second, with one amendment. All in favor of the motion with that amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. We're done with that. Now we move on to citizens to be heard. This item is for matters not on this evening's agenda. Discussion may follow comment on non-agenda items, or discussion and action may come at future meetings. Is there anybody who wishes to be heard on non-agenda items this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item, 11, new business. First item under that is budget and finance, consideration of the 2017 wage ordinances. Trustee Barr.
Yeah, the Budget and Finance Committee met this evening to get a report from Tyler, the Assistant Village Manager, considering the proposed 2017 wage ordinance. Tyler, did you want to say anything? No? This is pretty standard ordinance we do each year. There's two components to the what we're actually taking. There's the let me find it first. Two ordinances. The first one is the salary wages for the general classification personnel and the management. It reflects the ordinance reflects the scheduled 1.5% cost of living adjustment effective January 1st, 2017 for both those classes. And that's what this ordinance does. So I would make a motion to approve ordinance number
Is it to be determined?
to be determined, an ordinance related to 2017 wage and fringe benefits for village personnel of general classification and management commencing January 1st, 2017.
Second.
Discussion? We'll get roll call votes.
Yep.
Seeing none, this will be a roll call vote.
Trustee Rozak?
Yes.
Yes. Trustee Knight?
Yes.
Trustee Bachman?
Yes.
Trustee Zoll?
Aye.
And Trustee?
Aye.
Trustee Jones?
Aye.
Okay.
Continue.
Next item is for ordinance, an ordinance dealing with the 2017 wages and fringe benefits for lieutenants and sergeants. This reflects the 1.5% cost of living adjustment for them, also scheduled for January 1st, 2017. In addition, attached are exhibits laying out some unique fringe benefit and other conditions of employment unique to these employees. So I would, and the committee reviewed this and was recommending approval, so I will make a motion to approve ordinance number to be determined, an ordinance related to 2017 wages and fringe benefits for lieutenants and sergeants commencing January 1, 2017.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call vote.
Trustee Knight?
Aye.
Trustee Zoll?
Aye.
Trustee Bachman?
Aye.
Trustee Miller?
Yes.
Trustee Rozak?
Yes.
Trustee Jones?
Aye. Okay, more there?
That's it.
That's it, okay. Then we move on to item 11B, public safety. Trustee Rozak, you got 2 items under there. The first one's update and discussion on the police building construction.
Yes, I'm going to turn it over to the chief.
That's an easy one.
Presentation.
I don't know how to get that full screen.
Uh-oh. Oh,
We got to put in a slide.
I'm not used to that.
There you go. Use the laser.
wow.
Right there.
There you go.
What's that? I knew it was pointing to go.
All right, thank you very much. As you know, we approved a contract with Wiley Construction. Ben Paso and Eric Dillon are here from Wiley Construction. And as a part of that agreement, Zimmerman Architect and John Savinosh is here from Zimmerman. And they'll be talking here shortly about our progress so far. We're pleased with the progress we've made. We've been meeting weekly to put together a design for the building and to do our best with the budget that we have. And so we felt it was important to give you an update. A recent update I got from AV Data is they most likely will be out of the building by the end of the year.
That's a few weeks from now.
That's correct.
Wow.
So I've had some communication with them. They have purchased the building and they're moving their stuff out as we speak. So they're trying to wrap it up by the end of the year. So that's good progress in that area.
How'd you get that picture?
I have no idea. I'm sure someone from Riley got it. I don't know. Maybe John got
One of
it.
Riley's best cranes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to turn over to Ben, and he'll give you an update on where we are so far. And if you have questions for myself or or for him, you can ask him now as we present, or you can wait till the end.
Alright, so we've moved through this whole project. This was the existing plan. I think the majority of you have probably walked through or seen the building. So that's the existing plan. It's just to get you a reference. Couple spot, I'll try to do it here. This is kind of the existing warehouse, and we thought that was something to just reference you as you go through the drawing. So that dashed line is kind of that back warehouse area. The front's the office where you remember, and then that kind of here, that bottom.
So north is to the left.
Correct.
Correct. So yeah, this is that's the warehouse, and then this is kind of that open cubicle space, and then the office space up top. So if you go to the second, through, I don't know, 6 or 7 renditions, we strategized how this was going to flow from a functionality standpoint, and this is where we landed. Kind of admin on the left, the public entrance, where are you? Public entrance in this area, operations to the left. This is kind of the booking and sally port, investigators, evidence, and then kind of your garage space in the back. And then this over here is kind of your general, your meeting room.
Where would the garage door be?
The garage door would be over in this location here, which if you recall, this is kind of that back parking garage
Right. So it's
area.
existing driveway that still don't have to redo.
Correct.
How do you get into the book? Is there a
There's actually
loading dock there?
yeah, it's already existing. There's a garage door at the end of that where you can come directly in, so we're repurposing that.
Okay.
Are you gonna change, that's a dual elevation.
Yeah.
Correct. Currently you've got stairs in this way, and we've got a ramp proposed on kind of this
Oh.
end over there. So that's just very high level, where we landed and from just an update standpoint. So the next, so currently what we're looking at is what was approved to date was the $1 million variety. So we're trying to get as much as we can in that $1 million variety. Currently, that gets us up in this area. As we go through drawings, we're going to continually add pieces in as we budget this, and as we get through the drawings, we'll add more data to it. But currently, kind of that upper parcel is phase 1, and then phase 2 is the second. If you hit advance phase 2,
Oh, I'm sorry.
no. Phase 2 and phase 3 are kind of the second 2 pieces. So phase 2 is that, and then phase 3 is the community room. So from a budget update standpoint, in September of 15, Chief Nimmer provided his white paper at 3.8 million roughly. On 11/16, we verified that budget. We're at 3.7, we'll call it. There's some additional building improvements we've kind of discovered through that process, which could include a new roof. The roof on the building is, I don't want to call it disrepair, but it's something that is going to need maintenance. So it's something you could defer from a dollar standpoint, or something you could do today. And then the HVAC units on the building are towards the end of life. So neither were in the white paper, so we excluded them from our budget just from a dollars and cents standpoint, because they aren't necessarily needed to get the police department in that building, but they're items that if dollars were available today, you would want to do, but it could be a deferred cost. It would be a maintenance item just like on any other building. So those items were down below. Just we think it's important, and we talked about it, but to build a new building of the 26,000 square foot variety would be in that $8.5 to $9.5 million range, which if you look at 3.8 plus the investment of the building, we're well under that. So from a fiscal responsibility standpoint, I just thought it was valuable to put in there.
How many phases are in the 3.?
That is all 3 phases. It's all inclusive.
Okay, all right.
So it's all 3 phases, just because I wanted to compare apples to
Oh, yeah,
apples.
that's great.
This is something to consider, something we talked about at the last meeting. Delaying the construction start until fall of 2017 and asking for that additional $3 million come 2018 versus the 2020, like the delay, it was a staggered start. some of the reasons behind that were talked about that we wanted to convey to you is 4 years of inflation. No one knows what inflation is going to do. The economy is obviously on an uptick. It's just something to talk about that we wanted to convey to you. You know, that can be somewhere in that 2 to 5% range. So if you continue to push this out, there is a potential of inflation. There are some savings on supervision and management. A project of $1 million or a project of $4 million, you're not doubling up on supervision because you would be coming back to do things. So there's some savings there. And then obvious one is that the police department would fully function quicker. It was always, from the beginning, booking in the garage weren't in phase 1 from the original proposal, so there is some workarounds that'll have to happen in the interim. We valued that. We took a stab at, you don't know what inflation's going to do, you don't know all that kind of stuff, but that could be a $200,000 savings. You know, it's about 5% of the project, so we thought it was something we just wanted to mention. Not that everything's on track, everything's going the way that it was supposed to, but it was something that in the course of talking about budgets and looking at the plans, something that we felt we wanted to at least mention. So that's the biggest piece. So just update, we're doing good, we're on track.
Was the community room that size before? It seemed like it's half the size.
That's my question, yeah.
So I don't know if you
How
know
many
square
feet is
footage
that
of
now?
that, John.
I think it's about 5,000, I think the original was 6,200.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's big. I mean, it's square
It's big.
footage.
Looks small
Yeah,
there.
it looks small, but
It's, when you think about it, that building's 26. That's something that when I walked through and we figured out the program space, you look at it and you're like, all the, you know, the offices and everything up front, you think it's gonna kind of be able to handle everything, and then you start looking at it, it grows.
If that whole thing is, the whole thing is 28,000?
It's, yeah, 28,000, I believe.
Because that, I mean, that doesn't look like, no.
Well, if you, what are base sizes?
It's probably sort of 3. Not taking into account is the additional space to the east. That's staging space for us, so it would get larger. I don't know the exact square footage.
So it's
Yeah, so one of the
Yeah, I
things
forgot
that,
about that piece.
Because we are doing a smaller footprint than we would optimally have in the first phase.
Yeah.
Patrol and investigative pieces are going to be occupying that open office. When the full plan is realized, then additional space back in the zone becomes part of the community space. That's not depicted in here, but essentially that whole sliver becomes part of phase 3 once we're into permanent locations that are built in phase 2. So I would just argue that that border probably needs to go up for that zone.
Perfect.
So what is that room? Just
This
above?
room right here?
Yeah, with like a desk in the middle and the.
It's current open office and would be relinquished to phase 3
Okay.
upon the completion of roll call in its permanent location,
Oh.
which is back in here.
Oh,
As you
so
see, that's
I
in
wondered
phase
how
2.
many of those, yeah.
So I'll be moving persons from this zone into a fully occupied roll call, and then that space becomes available as part of phase 3.
So those boxes around that room north, above 3, are those built walls or
no, just desks.
just desks and
Yeah.
kind of framing the function area?
Right.
Right.
It's open office and stays as open office.
Yeah, I should have said, that was one of the reasons we actually had this, you know, the warehouse space, is this can't be easily put in that first phase.
Okay.
But this space is all finished, as you remember, so that's the space kind of on an inner room that you would put some chairs and tables and use it until you can get to phase 2.
Confused. You said seek an additional $3 million in 2018? Is that on top of the million or?
Yeah, it's roughly 3.8 million. I just added
Okay, so $3 million to complete 2 and
2 and 3, 2.8, which is, the white paper was the exact same. It was
Okay.
1 million for phase 1 and then 2.8 for phase 2 and 3.
No, they pushed this down.
So what's the time? Is there any timing you need us to?
No, I think
Just-
one of the things that when we were discussing this and that we wanted to, you know, just bring to your attention or to make you aware of is that there can be, and as you probably knew, there could be some cost savings by doing more in this. And my concern was in either be 218 or 2020 that you say, Chief, well, gosh, if you would have told me this, then I would have done that.
Yeah.
And so we just wanted to bring this up as a discussion point, something to think about and to consider. The timeline, we're still on schedule to do what we need to do for, you know, next year, early next year. That timeline hasn't changed. Some of the discussion, you know, when we start getting into the details of it, you talk to the experts about it. In that discussion, we all of a sudden we said, okay, well, what if we did start middle of 217 and work in and borrow more in 218 to finish more of the project? And so that's, you know, something that we discussed and something that we said, you know what, it's worth, you know, bringing it to your attention and at least consider that. But that being said, we're still, you know, on time to do what we need to do. But we always knew there was going to be, from a functionality standpoint, some issues, right? The booking room, as I knew and we knew going in, is an expensive piece to this because of the wall structure. It's not just drywall. It needs to, you know, be either, what do you guys call it? Block wall. You have some fancy term there.
Reinforced.
Yeah. So those things, and they have to go up to a certain height, right? And those are things that become expensive. And also the wall, and this is what we knew. And I also want to point out, and that's why I want to stress that where we were when we gave this presentation to you, we're right on that dollar figure, 3.8. You know, do we save potentially $200,000 if we do it earlier? Does it come down to 3.5, 3.6? You know, that's to be determined. But you know, things that why the second phase is a little bit more expensive is because that block wall needs to go in between where the vehicles will be and the office space for safety reasons, correct, John?
Yes.
And so those are some of the things that become a little more costly, and therefore that's why we always had put that into the, you know, second phase. But we had the department also look at the design of it, and had the officers were given some opportunity to put input in, and you know, they all, I didn't get a lot of input, just a place to wash their car, but I told them there's plenty of places to do that. So they really agreed with the design of the building. I think it's functional, and obviously John was brought on board from Zimmerman because he does this all over the state, and so we like the design of it. We believe it's going to be functional for us. It's just, you know, for instance, you know, there is that going to be where, you know, that back space where you see to the left of the red line will be some space where you have the officers and some of the operational standpoint for that first phase until we get the second part of it built. So it's not going to be, you know, ideal, but it will be functional, and we'll be able to make it work. So
this is on the million, but not including the roof and the HVAC.
say that one more.
This is $1 million, but this doesn't include the cost for the roof and the HVAC.
Correct.
Correct.
You know, it's you know, and we knew when we did the inspection for the building, there is that. If you go back to the first slide, actually, please. If you look, that's that antenna, and what happens is that the damage from the roof is from that antenna, the ice falling off that antenna. Yeah, there's times where we have to close the road because of the ice falling. So you'll see a lot of those apartment buildings will also have that damage on the roof. So it's been patched. We were aware of it when we went up there. Our inspectors went up there. We knew that was the issue, or there was, you know, some maintenance that's going to have to be done there. And the HVAC, everything's functional, obviously. But at some point, yeah, I mean, you know, when you talk to these guys about it, they look at it from a, You know, at some point, you're gonna have to do it. Is it cheaper to do it down the road, or is it cheaper to do it now, you know, type of thing.
Right. Do you do it when the building's not occupied, or do you do it when it's occupied? When you know it's gonna be a cost that comes. So in that $1 million, do we have costs to, you know, repair the roof in spots, but not replace it? And HVAC, do we have dollars to reuse the air handlers? Yes, but not replace them.
Do you have a dollar amount for those that we can compare, like?
Yeah, it was in that slide. If you go to the last slide, please.
For what, the roof and the
Yeah, I think
air handlers?
you have a dollar figure, 354.
Yeah, 354. The complete re-roof is in the 200,000 plus variety, and then the air handling units themselves were in that $100,000.
Do you have the cost of the repair, if you just did repairs?
Just
Or
repairs?
just maintenance?
That would be within.
The 1 million?
Yeah. I don't know those numbers up. But it would be allowances more than anything, because you don't really know what you're getting into, because currently the roof should not leak, but you know that as you're going through it, and we saw what it's at, it would be foolish not to have dollars in there, because we're not gonna turn a building over that leaks.
And you mentioned that in that $1 million, you had calculated some allowances for maintenance
Correct. For maintenance of the roof and
and the AC.
the AC, yeah. I mean, it would be small dollars, because we assume everything's operational, but they're not large dollars.
The, in the HVAC, the cost and the projections on the HVAC replacement is for the appropriate sizing of the HVAC given the building's new use and configuration.
Correct, yes.
Not simply replacing.
Yes, yes. Well, there are some, in the second phase, there are some additional units that would be needed, because you're turning the garage space and that kind of stuff. That's in the second phase.
And then with the ice from the tower issue, does that mean my hope that we can line that roof with solar panels is not practical because they might be subject to damage from that falling ice? I mean,
That's it. Yeah, that is a good question. One that I haven't studied, but I would be concerned of until we figure out how, I mean, and that's not in this, but until you figure out how to not have ice chunks falling from the antenna. But I haven't thought about it. That building has multiple tiers of roof, so does one roof not get damaged? I don't know the answer to that, because it kind of steps down as you come to the front, but.
oh,
You know what I mean? Step back, there's like the warehouse piece that's up higher than the front piece is a little.
Underneath the truck.
and this last point is a point. It's not a question or necessarily a criticism, but an observation and an expression of my opinion. Is that, and I appreciate that, you know, design of a space and design of a building is dynamic, and I support of the purchase. I support getting what we need for the police. I am, however, very deeply saddened that we're going to less than 50% of what we initially thought was extra space there for us. You know, initially the space that we thought was not needed was 2 bay widths. Now we're 1 bay width plus some, 30% less. So it's just, but my point is, it's just too bad. I was really thinking that was kind of a nice come along with this project, that we get some extra community space.
If I might, don't be too sad, because it's easily put, I mean, we can expand that.
But, yeah, I want you guys to have what.
Right, no, I think,
it's just,
I agree with you on that, and we can, I think there's room in there for that, right, John?
Yes.
Yeah. So we can,
There's room, I don't understand.
yeah, we'll get just that less, I mean, like those, if you see right next to 3, those storage bays, we could give that space back, in theory.
That's a soft demising line.
Right.
This could vary.
Yeah. So we can look at that.
I'm a little concerned about scope creep and.
About what? I can't hear you.
Scope creep and overall cost. And I guess we have so many capital needs right now. And I agree, I want the police to have a building that works for them and that meets all their needs. I just am very cognizant that we have all kinds of other issues that we need to fund right now in terms of our streets, our water, our alleys, etc. So, you know, I guess I would ask you to keep it at a Chevy level, not necessarily the, you know, Mercedes-Benz. That's my preference personally. So the Chevy gets you around, you know, it may not be the best style, but it gets you where you need to go. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, and that's something you didn't witness, and I really glossed over it, but we did go through about 7 renditions of where, you know, to get to the point that we're at, and some of those early renditions were of a lot higher dollar value, and we honed in that scope. And I mean, we aren't at lavish finishes; they're very, you know, average durable finishes. If you look, one of the other reasons we showed that first existing phase, if you look at that very first, the existing plan, and you look at the first, you'll notice kind of this whole area, we reused as much as we could to stay functional. So if you go back one more slide, I think, or 2 more, sorry. If you look at this space, it looks very much like, if you kind of go to the next one, yeah. We tried to repurpose and reuse as much as we can, keeping in mind, you know, dollars and cents. Yes.
Going on the HVAC, my preference would be to wait until at least the second phase is done, because then we would know how many exact units you needed, right? Steve, so like, is that meaning?
We're not, it's not, that money is not put into the phase.
Yeah, it's not put into.
The only money that's in phase 1 for that is to make it functional, or to do minor repairs in the roof and or minor repairs in the HVAC. So that's not, that 354, that's not even in there.
And
no.
Then for the other,
because we wouldn't be doing anything but that.
And then for the other phases, I mean, it makes sense to do them, you know, earlier than for the inflation factor earlier. I would like to know why we wouldn't, you know what I'm saying? Because there must be other, when we did our budgeting, our long-range financial planning, there was a reason that we had other expenses maybe.
We had to spread them over, we had so many priorities that in order to get this in to kind of our goal, we had to put it to, we had to do it in phases.
So if that comes up, I don't know, again, or maybe you can just give a little briefing on what that would mean, what we would have to not.
Well, if you had $3 million to your budget in 18, which you're asking, 318, you know, you decide, okay, fine, we're going to absorb the tax increase on that, or we're going to cut roads or other things. So, you know, I mean, it's going to be your choice. I mean, higher taxes or cuts in streets, everything that Mr. Benton talked about. I mean, we try to balance the number so we can fund it all while keeping our debt levy for debt under 5% with that new plan, you know, that Mark talked about, that transfers. So, you know, it's all about tax levy. But obviously, Chief wanted to make sure that he goes on record and saying, I'm fine with that, but don't come 2 years from now and tell me why in the hell are you coming, why didn't you remind us of that? So I think it's a reasonable thing for him to bring up, but we still have the constraints on our levy.
What's the 3 million in 2018? I thought phase 1 was $1 million and phase 2 was 850,000.
$1 million and it's 2.8. I shouldn't have put 3. I put 3 because if you did if you go to the budget one, which is the second to last slide. So the budget is 3.6. If you did all improvements, it's very close to 4. So if you spend $1 million in year 1, then you take 4 minus $1 million, it'd be an additional $3 million to do everything. Does that make sense?
It's scheduled for
It-
2020.
Right, it's scheduled currently for
They're saying-
2020.
All he's saying is hypothetically, you could do it in 2018 and say, I mean, that's all.
Yeah, all I'm saying is hypothetically, if you did it all in, if you delayed the start of it until middle of 2017 and got the additional funds for 2018 and spent the $4 million over two yearly budget cycles, you would start with $1 million in 2017 and finish with the additional $3 million in 2018, or even 2.5, or you could pick a number. You could gobble more of it. What you would be saving is the potential of inflation, the additional supervision. When you're on site, when our superintendent is on site managing a job, he can manage $1 million job or he can manage a $4 million job. It isn't an equation of dollars, he's just on site doing that. So if you could save that difference between the two projects of extending that out.
Right.
So that's all. That's all. It was just pieces that came up. We thought it was worthwhile to at least share that. I mean, obviously I was not around for the, spreading it out over a 4-year period.
It should be noted, the chief is very happy that you gave him what you did to do the first phase, and he's not complaining.
Yeah.
That's what you're
Oh, yeah, no.
thinking.
This
So
is more, I just want.
clarify that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just didn't want, and this was brought up, in the discussions with the people that do this, And so as we started getting this project going, we started looking at the drawings and looking at how far we could go and doing some of those things. I felt that it was important for me to discuss that, because I didn't want in 2020 saying, or 2019 saying, well, we could have done it now. The next construction company, it should not be Riley. They come in and say, well, if you would have done this or that, you could have been, So I want everyone to know exactly where we're at, what we've talked about, and some of the things that we thought could be savings, but that's up to decisions that have to be made by you guys. But I wanted you to make sure you had all the information. So yeah, that's why I said we're ready. We're moving along just fine, and we're gonna get once we're gonna tweak the final, at least that first phase drawings, and get drawn up, and start bidding that out here soon. So
What's the timeline?
for
Currently, you're going to go forward with construction of phase 1. They would be ready in
End of January.
I'm sorry, what?
End of January.
What would be the end of January?
Completion of documents for phase 1.
So prepared to go out as bids?
Yes.
and we have about
All those 30 separate contracts?
That's not my problem, that's mine.
I know, but you have the design responsibility in it, right?
Yeah, but it doesn't, it's a functional division of responsibilities by trade.
Okay.
Thing Riley does all the time. Doesn't affect the nature of the bid document when you prepare. It is impacted by the front end, or the set of explanations of the trades that Riley will prepare.
Okay.
Again, that's common. Yeah.
Was there any, you said at the inspection, when you did our inspection before purchase, we knew about the roof and the HVAC. Was there any discussions with the owner to reduce the purchase price for those items? Do you know?
No. We tried to.
Well, there was a lot.
That's right, yeah, there's a lot of back and forth, many years, yes.
yes,
That
yes,
was the price that they offered, and that was the price that they offered.
yes.
No doubt.
There was
So, assuming you tried, and he said no.
Yeah. We'll leave it at that.
Okay. Any other questions? That's the presentation.
Will this be available to the trustees or sent to the trustees?
Sure.
Or via-
Yeah,
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Absolutely.
What do you want to put on your case page? We have a webpage on the building. Sure.
Yep, I'll email to you. I'll email to you.
Can we get a copy, put it in the Dropbox?
You're asking Chris. He doesn't know
I'm
that.
checking.
He's like,
The package,
Tyler?
That's our clerk usually does.
Yeah, that would
I'll
be
take care of this.
And,
I have access to it.
Sorry, Diana.
Oh, do you?
I'll send you any minutes.
No.
That you and Chris have the same.
All right, very good. Thank you, gentlemen.
No, that's okay.
We'll move on. Staying with public safety, trustee Rozak, consideration of possible addition of stop sign at Murray and Beverly.
Yes, so the police chief, since the last meeting, 2 weeks ago, police chief had himself and staff do a traffic count and any type of traffic infractions on the intersection that was brought to our attention as potentially needing some more safety features. That analysis happened on November 29th and November 30th. There were no infractions during those periods, although it was noted that there's a lot of traffic going through that intersection, so more than in the past and more than other intersections in the area. So we looked at the standards, stop signs, the state standard, and basically, no more than I would, but it said, we need 5 traffic accidents in a year to warrant a 4-way stop sign. Trustee Maher had done his own analysis and noted a very thorough analysis of our stop signs on Beverly and some other streets, and noted that we don't seem to have a very consistent policy that we know of for installing stop signs and crosswalks and stop bars. So one of the things we'd like to do for this intersection, until we have further analysis, we would like to do the painted lines. All 4, our recommendation is the painted crosswalk lines and to hold off on the stop sign at this moment in time. And in addition, we would ask staff to work on giving us some written documentation of our process for installing safety features like stop signs and crosswalk markings, and potentially developing some policy in the future. So discussing it in committee and then potentially developing a policy to bring to the board. So I guess the motion then, let's see what it says here, 1 second, because we amended it slightly. So I move that we adopt, do I have to say the village ordinance?
Yep. Well,
No, we're not doing that yet.
We're not doing that.
Well, we are moving to
We're
crosswalk.
instructing staff.
Staff. Okay, so we don't need a motion?
You can instruct staff, what do you mean to instruct? Well,
We're going to instruct staff to do 2 things.
Right.
We would like to do this is to paint the 4-way crosswalk markings at the intersection of North Murray Avenue and East Beverly Road, and to provide research documentation on our current policy.
Village-wide policy?
Yeah, local direction, guidance, policy, whatever we have that's written on how it's determined where we have stop signs and crosswalk markings.
With the idea of
With the idea of, creating policy or updating policy.
It also said that the chief will put a sign saying cross traffic does not stop on Beverly stop signs, so that people stop, realizing the other traffic is rolling.
We don't need a motion
No, just instruction, we get in the minutes.
Can I ask a question about the crosswalk itself? Its head and bike safety plan specifies a recommendation for the type of crosswalk, which I believe, I forget what it's called now, international, there's some name, independent bike safety master plan, that's a recommendation for crosswalks. So can we use that recommendation instead of just lines indicating that crosswalk.
Oh, there's like a different mark.
Yeah, there's a recommendation in the pet and bike safety plan as to the actual type of painting to do to designate a crosswalk. And I forget, I can't recall at the moment, the type of, yeah,
I
it's
think
like
that's right.
international, continental, or, I'm just saying, let's use the crosswalk designation that is in the pet and bike safety plan.
And it would cover all four?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That would be fine.
If Joel is here,
Yeah.
no, he's here for another item. Joel is, what was I gonna ask you? You can't paint this late? I mean, it's a little late?
I could maybe yet tomorrow. Sounds like it's gonna get really cold later this week. I mean, if we have a break in the weather, there's a possibility. But usually this time of the year, they're pretty much,
We usually do it all in the
Pretty much done.
spring, we do all of ours, so, just so you know.
Can we just, if there is a break in the weather, would that be possible?
Can you put in place those signs?
Yeah, we can
Yeah,
still
he's
put
gonna
signs,
do-
definitely.
I think that was discussed in committee, as weather permits,
Yeah.
or as conditions.
That'd be-
Says weather permits.
Yeah.
No, that's what I'm just trying to post it.
Okay? Move on. Okay, next item is Public Works, trustee Menta, consideration of special privilege application for the monument sign for the North Shore Region Post.
Right, there's a monument sign in front of the American Legion Post on Wilson Drive. It's an existing sign that we do not have a special privilege application on file, and it is in the right of way, public right of way. So they applied, it's the same kind of wishing well wooden outer structure, but they're replacing the sign in the center. And they are going to go to DRB to have the sign approved by DRB, and this is just approving the special privilege application because it is in the public right of way, even though it's already in the public right of way, but we're blessing it at this point. So I will move to approve a special privilege application for a business monument sign within the public way at property 4121 North Wilson Drive for American Legion Post 331.
Sorry.
Discussion?
Is there an existing sign, is this sign already out near the road?
That one, there were two signs.
Right.
There's the one that is in the wooden frame with the wishing well type thing, and that's a small one. And that's what they're replacing. They're keeping the wooden frame and the wishing well roof and just making the larger frame. Currently, there is also another sign, smaller, that's closer to the road, that they're removing.
Okay, that's good.
Right, so this one is staying in the same spot.
And in committee, it was also noted that this current sign with the location and its size were reviewed, and it doesn't affect sight lines for traffic at all.
Right. Any other discussion? We have motion and second. All in favor of the motion stated, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Takes us to sub-item D, JP&L, which is trustee McKay, who's not here. Are we going to defer this, or?
No, we are taking action on this. We have a memo in our package regarding personnel in our Department of Public Works. There was a bit of, I mean, not that any of it is not good news, but I did see some good news in here that we saw that that we got a postponement on 2 retirements for a year. Those are a significant amount of years to lose there, so it's I was pleased personally to see that we had one of those folks for a couple of more years. But we are looking, DPW is looking to fill a current vacant position with the new retirement. We previously approved Joel, help me out. What did we previously?
Recruitment, I think should be.
Right. That's right, we approved the recruitment, and now we're looking to fill those positions. So I move that staff be authorized to fill 2 positions in the Department of Public Works.
Second?
Discussion?
And what 2 positions? Are we just, like, is it just a blanket, whatever one you decide, or?
Yeah, no, one is a special equipment operator, which is what we call our entry level in DPW, so ultimately our refuse collector. And the other position is really going to be replacing Mike Donlinger, who is a Forester 1. But I think we're leaving that open right now to not necessarily hire another Forester, but maybe another entry level, I guess, depending on what we get for applications. So if we were to get somebody that comes with an application that's an experienced Forester, we would consider actually replacing them as a Forester. But for all intents and purposes, we're looking for entry level people.
Well, what do you advertise the position as?
It's a special equipment operator 2 is the actual title.
For the forester?
For the forestry.
Yes,
For both of them.
for both.
And how many,
How would forestry people know that, to respond to that?
Well, I mean, we're not necessarily looking for a Forester. Typically, the way they've done it in the past, as people gain experience in the department, they would move up. So they would go from a special equipment operator. We would potentially post it internally if we felt we had a qualified individual that had the skill sets to be a Forester. That Forester position might be filled internally and then backfilled as a special equipment operator for entry level.
and how many refuge collector positions are there?
3.
3, and so we're down to 2, is that?
We are down to 2.
We need 1 more. And same thing for the special equipment.
The road collector is our special equipment operator. It's just the title we use, but it includes a lot of different things, and the reason we did that is, currently we collect refuse 3 days a week, so the other 2 days, typically there's other duties and tasks, so I think about a year ago we changed the title to that. Instead of recruiting a garbage collector, we retitled it, looking for more, I guess, skill sets from the outside.
Any other discussion?
We do. And before you do, I just add the second page of the memo from Leanne. I thought was very interesting as well to note that, over the last number of years, slowly the department's seniority average is dropping, and I don't know that it's a concern, but I think it's important that we talk about how good our staff does, and particularly when we talk about budgeting issues, and I think we need to continue to remind ourselves that that's important.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion, second. Call the question. All in favor of the motion stated, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Takes us to, reports. Okay. Reports from village officials. I have one making the appointment of Craig Bullock to the police commission. And I don't have any other reports. So, does any trustees have reports?
Yeah, for report, I have filed my papers for declaration of candidacy for the spring elections, and I've also filed my necessary nomination papers this evening. I will be running this spring.
Any other reports?
Yeah, on December 14th, the Wilson Drive Steering Committee, I think we're having our last meeting. And we did have a presentation from the consultant MSA on, I think, 4 different concepts for Wilson Drive of varying road widths, different amenities and intersection designs and stuff like that. And so we're going to fiddle around with that. The steering committee on the 14th and have something presumably at the end of that meeting to forward to the Strategic Initiatives Committee. So it should be an interesting, worthwhile meeting on December 14th.
What time and where is that?
I think 7, I assume here in this room. But you know, check with her,
Check with,
Erica.
can you make
Or
sure
on
that she sends
the- or
us
on
a
the calendar.
because I think that some of the trustees may have an interest. The culmination time here. Okay, any other reports from trustees?
I just want to mention, I went to an event the Friends of the Library put on with Daniel Golden, I think, from Boswell Books. That was really interesting and very well attended, and I want to congratulate the Friends of the Library for continuing to bring that great event to the Shorewood each year.
I was at one a year or two ago.
He's really interesting,
he's
yeah.
quite a guy.
Great gift ideas.
Remember what?
Tree lighting?
I was there just before it got out. Were you?
I know trustee McKeag would have brought it up as a report from JP&L, but with our approval of the consent agenda and the appointment Paul Kreschel to the Elder Service Advisory Board, that completes our filling of all openings on our citizen committees. There is now for 2 years. So I believe this is, we're in a good place with people. We had, as you know, lots of interest and lots of.
Has this ever happened before?
I
never.
I was like, wow. It's not just for now. I mean, we're good through
Congratulations.
till 2018.
Good work.
Anne really deserves, Anne and Tanya, for really keeping us on task with getting people going. And just from a conservation committee standpoint, we did have our first meeting with our full complement of members, and it was.
And they all showed?
It makes a difference. Everybody was there, and lots of stuff is getting done, and I think this is we're in a good place all the way around. So kudos to
This is really good news.
Chairperson McKeag and to the JP&L.
Thank you. Any other reports from trustees? Okay, reports from the village manager.
Oh, I just want to, Diane is here tonight, running on empty. She was, Friday night, she worked till 8 o'clock in counting on behalf of her county.
Trump won in Georgia?
Yes, they won, there was a
I
recount.
hope you found a couple extra votes right now for Hillary.
And members reconciled perfect.
Nice.
Even better.
So they were supposed to go for Saturday, but she got it done Friday night. So they've been gone, we're trying to get the worst time possibly to do a clerk, because usually the clerks are treasurers, and the treasurers are the ones who do the tax bills. So we're a little behind on tax bills, a couple days. We're going to try to get them out by this Friday. We usually try to get them out by the 5th or 6th, so we're a little couple days behind. But tax bills will be going out this week.
Okay.
So,
You can delay mine as long as.
Yeah, don't rush, don't rush. I don't think anybody's really in that hurry. Take a couple months.
that's all I have on that question.
Okay, thank you. Items for future consideration?
When we were discussing the plans, that we talked about some type of resolution on diversity and embracing diversity, and this might be an appropriate time to maybe fashion a proclamation or something about the village's commitment to diversity in all ways. And, I don't know.
Should we maybe put it on the list, but
Get it to
It may be a committee.
committee and business
Let's
relations.
do it.
Okay. Thank you.
I see there's a marketing advisory committee tomorrow meeting, and can we get a presentation or something for a future agenda item?
You're gonna be on the 18th, 19th, there will be one.
Oh, there it
Because
is.
they have to meet with the leadership committee, so we're gonna go have the marketing
19th of December.
December. Yeah, there'll be a recommendation on the Shorewood today contract, and then there may be, I don't know if we'll have it done, an RFP for,
Okay,
and we'll do a presentation.
and other documents?
They should have been on the web. Diane, did you put them on the web today? I know
The
there's
agenda
agenda,
is out there,
but
I
not the
didn't put the
materials?
materials. I can put them on.
Okay, thank you.
No, because
Item for future
Yes.
consideration
Just
or
one.
a motion to adjourn?
No, I didn't think we should consideration. I see that the JP&L will be discussing the special event policy. And if there are any materials for that, if we could make sure that our committee members get them as well, and perhaps it's something that we would like to discuss as a committee prior to going to full board for discussion in community business relations or.
So you want it on 2 committees?
Well, yes, if it's going to go to full board, I think we would like to have a chance to review it at the committee level, because that's where you can often have a lot of
As we
discussion.
informed the JP&L today, Tyler and I are going to, based on a lot of comments we have, there are tons of them, we're going to really simplify this, and so we probably will have something back in January. The end of January, maybe February for you. So,
I'm not sure, why would we discuss it at both committees
I don't know if
rather
that-
than have the full board like us all to talk about it at the same
Yeah.
time? So we have 2 separate discussions and we don't know what's happening in the
defer to the village president to take
I
care of
think
that
it's a
kind of
community
question.
business relations issue as well as a JP&L, so.
We have to pick a home for it. And,
Let's keep
Safety.
it, let's keep it with JP&L, and we'll wait until our chairperson is back, and
Can I just ask why it would be problematic for us to discuss it in committee? Because if it's agenda, at least we have the opportunity for the 3 of us to discuss it.
I'm just thinking you've got 2 separate discussions going on the same issue.
Right, and then it would come to full board, and then we'd have an.
perhaps, we're hoping, I believe, we're hoping to have something in place by March, April, and if we bring this back in January, perhaps we can take it, let's take it at JP&L, and then if between Chairperson McKeag and President Johnson, if it's ready to come to the full board, or if it kicks over to the other committee for other, rather than both people working on it at the same time, let's start here.
That's
and
fine.
then it needs to go.
There have been times, that things will come to the budget committee after they've gone through other committees.
Understand.
So this is similar situation.
It might be, it may be, there's enough facets to this to have a separate board meeting, maybe to run through together, or even
We
a
may
couple.
withdraw the special event policy, and we might just withdraw it and not do it, so.
Well, let's see what you're bringing back to the committee.
Yeah.
And like the minutes to reflect that.
Can I just-
I'm gonna be very simple.
This is for another report from JP&L, but we've had discussions, and I just wanted the other trustees to know that we've been having discussions about having a series of joint meetings of commissions, for example, the Plan Commission, CDA, and Design Review Board, possibly also Conservation, to talk about, concerns that they may all have, long development issues and whatever might be. And then on the recreation and park side, have a chance for head and bike safety, parks, and maybe conservation to meet all together. And also to have meetings once the board and commission handbook is updated, but to give, we have a lot of new members, as we've discussed, many new people have been appointed, and I'm not sure people really, it would be beneficial, I think, to give new members of the committees an understanding of the particular legal requirements, open meetings, quasi-judicial for those that are quasi-judicial. So I think we'd like to have both some chance for there to be some discussion between the commissions and also some basic orientation and education for commission members. So we're starting to talk about that and plan for that.
So this is kind of an item for future consideration, but you're doing it within the confines of.
Yeah, I just wanted everybody to know that this is what we're, and if you have ideas, let us know.
Sure.
Right. There's a lot going on in JP&L with handbooks and with, other things that are being discussed at multiple committee meetings, right? Like there's kind of standing agenda items. I have an interest in those too, and I don't know how to get better updates before it eventually comes to the board for a full vote. I kind of am missing out in those discussions. I don't know what really is being discussed necessarily.
These two items, the one about letting the right hand know what the left hand is doing, and starting to revise the handbook and have some training program, are brand new discussions that just were brought up at the last meeting. And I think Chairperson McKay will agenda them for future discussions. I'm sure there'll be supporting information. So with just like our other committee topics, it'll be in our package. Because I think we had some real good discussion and some good agreement on both those issues. So I think it's going to be a pretty dynamic discussion and plenty of opportunities to join.
Because there's one that keeps showing up. It's those committees, the back.
The quorum.
Yeah, like. So I don't know how many times it's been discussed. I don't know where it's going.
Part for JP&L in particular, those couple of agenda items that we see continue to appear doesn't necessarily mean there are continuing and substantive discussions, but rather that they haven't been attended to yet, so they keep appearing as something we need to take care of.
Okay.
The quorum and attendance issue specifically.
Okay, any other items? For future? Takes us to adjournment.
I move to adjourn. Second.
Did you make a motion in a second?
Aye.
Aye.